Mom, look what I found. 10-year-old Ethan Parker's voice cut through the autumn woods like he was trying to shout all the way to the rusted spike of steel rising beyond the trees an old radio tower locals used to call Cedar Ridge Tower, abandoned since the 90s. His mother, Sarah Parker, had been picking mushrooms a few miles from the site when she turned and saw him standing at the edge of something that didn't belong in a family outing. A pit. Half covered with rotting boards and a strip of tarp that had fused into the soil like the ground itself was trying to forget it. Sarah lifted her hand sharply. Ethan. Back up. Now. Don't move. It's not safe. But it was already too late. A board cracked under his foot dry and sharp, the way old wood breaks when it's been waiting years for one wrong step. Ethan dropped about a foot, caught himself on the edge, let out a short scream, and then went silent. Because he saw what was down there. At the bottom of the pit, in cold damp mud, lay two human shapes. Or what was left of them. Two skeletons. Shreds of dark work uniforms clung to bone. Rusted clips. Bits of belt, and two metal ID badges so dull they barely reflected light, as if someone had chosen them for exactly that reason. Sarah yanked Ethan back by his jacket, pulled him away from the edge, and called 911. Her hands shook. Her voice didn't. That happens sometimes. When your brain makes a decision before your emotions get a vote. Police arrived fast. The woods were taped off. Floodlights appeared. A forensic tent went up beside the pit like death needed an office. 4 hours later, a cold case detective from the county bureau stepped out of an unmarked sedan. Detective Laura Hayes. 32. Short hair. No makeup. The kind of expression that said she didn't believe in coincidences, only in patterns that hadn't been understood yet. Beside her was her partner, Officer Ryan Cole, younger, still carrying that dangerous belief that logic always wins in the end. Laura crouched at the edge and looked down. Not at the bones. At the details. The small things that eventually turn into the truth. You know why I took this job? She asked quietly. Ryan glanced at her. Why? My father vanished when I was 15. Never found. And since then, I don't hunt ghosts. I hunt answers, for people who never got them. A gray-haired forensic tech named Frank Miller climbed out of the pit, peeling off muddy gloves. In his hand were the two ID badges. Tower staff, he said. Names stamped here, Paul Bennett and Eric Wolf. Laura didn't raise an eyebrow. But something inside her clicked. Because names like that don't come out of nowhere. They come out of old boxes, sealed folders, and cases everyone pretended were finished. The database confirmed it within minutes. Paul Bennett and Eric Wolf, missing since March 1993, last seen during a night shift at Cedar Ridge Tower. The case had been marked likely workplace tragedy, then quietly closed. Except bodies were never found. Which meant it wasn't closed. It was just packed away. In an old file photo, 5 men stood in work uniforms in front of the tower, smiling like people who still believed the world played fair. Laura tapped the image. These two are our victims. Paul Bennett, serious one. Square jaw. Eric Wolf right next to him, always smiling. Ryan frowned. And the others? Laura's eyes drifted over the remaining faces. The others are the ones who lived. And now we find out who carried the truth in his pocket for 15 years. They started with the man who had supervised that shift. Victor Simmons. Now 67. Living alone in a brick house on the edge of town, where mailboxes rust faster than people admit mistakes. He didn't open the door right away. When he did, he stood tall and rigid, still wearing the posture of a man who'd spent his life being obeyed. He looked at Laura's badge and said softly, like he'd rehearsed it for years. I knew you'd come. Sooner or later. Mr. Simmons, Laura said, tell me about that night. Night like any other. Shift work. All 5 men present. Laura showed him the photo. Paul and Eric, what were they like? Simmons gave a short laugh with no humor. Paul? Stubborn as concrete. Always arguing. Principled to the point of annoyance. He stared past Laura, like he was watching 1993 play back on the wall. A week before they vanished, he told me, someone's stealing equipment from this tower. And I'm going to prove it. Who did he suspect? Simmons didn't hesitate. Andrew Collins ***. My deputy. Young. Ambitious, and already doing off-the-book sales. And Eric? Simmons exhaled. Eric was easy. Friendly. And yes, he chased women. Even at work. Somehow he always had a private moment to find. Laura's gaze sharpened. With who? I don't know. I saw him once in a storage room with a woman. Kissing. Didn't see her face. Laura kept her voice flat. How did they disappear? Simmons spoke faster, like he wanted to get it out before his conscience could interrupt. At 10:30, Paul radioed in. Said, we're going up top, antenna service. Back in an hour. And? At 1 a.m. nothing. We went up, nobody. Just blood on the floor, and a smashed radio. Laura didn't interrupt. Simmons added the conclusion like a man placing a stone on a grave. I assumed Collins did it. He had motive. Paul was going to turn him in. Outside, Ryan fell into step beside Laura. He's pushing Collins hard, Ryan said. Too clean, right? Yeah, Laura replied. When a story fits too perfectly, somebody worked overtime on it. Andrew Collins met them in a glass office building downtown. A former tower technician turned businessman. Tan. Expensive watch, a smile that said, I'm successful, so I must be innocent. But when Laura showed her badge, his face drained of color and his left eye twitched. You found them, he blurted, voice cracking. We found remains, Laura said. And their badges. Collins swallowed. I always knew they'd turn up. Why? He stared at the floor. Because everyone blamed me. Because of the theft. Tell me. Yes. I stole. I sold equipment. Back then, people did it. But Paul decided he wanted to be a hero. Did he threaten you? The day before they vanished, he said, I know it's you, Andrew, I can prove it. I lost it. I yelled. I said things. But words aren't murder. Where were you that night? In the server room, Collins answered too quickly. Fixing a transmitter. Laura tilted her head. Fixing? He forced a nervous smile, then realized he'd slipped. I was supposed to meet a buyer, he admitted. On the roof. Midnight. He was going to pick up a batch. And what did you see? Collins swallowed again. I went up at 11:45. There was blood. Fresh. No one there. Why didn't you call police? Because I was holding stolen gear. They would have cuffed me before I finished breathing. What did you do? I ran. Hid. Stayed in the server room until after 1. Laura watched him closely. Was anyone else up there? Collins hesitated, then whispered. When I ran down the stairwell, someone was there. Tall. In the shadows. I couldn't see his face. Tall. That word landed like a needle. Because in that group of 5, only 2 men were truly tall. Simmons. And Paul. But Paul was already on the roof. Next, Laura interviewed Michael Harris, the third man in the photo. He agreed to meet at a roadside diner where the coffee always tastes burnt and people always lower their voices like the booths are recording them. Harris was shorter, heavier, thick glasses. He adjusted them every few seconds, like he was trying to correct reality. Thank you for finding Paul, he said. 15 years. I hoped. And I feared. You were close? Laura asked. Best friends since college. Paul was honest to the bone. And Eric? Harris hesitated. Eric had a secret. What secret? Harris gripped his mug. An affair. With a coworker's wife. I knew. I kept quiet. Laura's eyes narrowed. Whose wife? Harris shook his head hard. I won't say. She died 2 years later. Suicide. He said it like the words still tasted like metal. Laura kept her tone even. Where were you that night? Lower floors. Checking systems. But I saw Collins run to his car. And he had a red stain on his shirt. I assumed coffee. Now I think, blood. Then Laura visited Megan Wolf, Eric's widow. She opened the door already crying, like the grief had never really stopped, she'd only learned how to do it quietly. I knew he was dead, she said. I felt it. Did Eric have enemies? No. I mean, there was fear. He was terrified the husband would find out. The husband of who? Megan wiped her face with her palm. The woman he was seeing. I didn't know her name. I didn't want to. Did Eric say anything before he vanished? Megan nodded. One strange line. If anything happens, tell Grace. Grace? Paul's sister. She kept his things after he disappeared. Grace had a box in her attic. Inside it, Paul's notebook. And one entry dated the day before the shift, short enough to be dangerous. Tomorrow it ends. C will try to stop me, but I have leverage. Ryan said it immediately. C is Collins. Laura didn't answer right away. Because if it's that obvious, it might be the trap. They tracked down the old tower security guard, Samuel Dalton, now in a nursing home. His memory wandered, but that night stayed sharp. Strange shift, he muttered. Everybody wired. Who? All of them. Collins pacing. Simmons stepping out of his office even though he later swore he didn't. And Harris? Dalton squinted. Harris asked me, Sam, you seen Eric come down yet? And his pants were dusty, like he'd been on the emergency stairs. Laura went back to Simmons. You told me you never left your office. Simmons went pale. I didn't. The guard saw you. Silence. Then Simmons exhaled, defeated. Fine. I stepped out. 5 minutes. For a cigarette. Where? Second floor balcony. Why lie? Simmons looked at Laura the way men look at consequences. Because it sounds suspicious. Laura leaned slightly forward. What if you went up to the roof? Why would I kill my technicians? Laura spoke slowly, each word like a nail going in clean. Because they might have discovered your secret. Simmons froze. What secret? That you were working federal counterintelligence. An operation running through the tower. Simmons didn't ask how she knew. He asked something worse. Who told you? That doesn't matter, Laura said. What matters is this, you said you made a secure line call at 11:50 p.m. 12 minutes long. Simmons nodded too confidently. Yes. Verify it. Back at the station, Laura laid everything out. Statements. Logs. Times. And then one detail stopped the whole picture. Collins claimed he'd been repairing equipment all night. But the maintenance log had been altered. Originally, 8:30 p.m. Later changed to 12:30 a.m. A fake. Laura summoned Collins again. This time he arrived with an attorney. Laura placed the copied log in front of him. You lied about the repair time. Collins shifted in his seat. I could have misremembered. By 4 hours? His attorney tried to speak. Laura cut him off. Your client is a primary suspect in a double homicide. Then she slid a crime scene photo across the table, blood on the upper level. The guard saw blood on your shirt. Collins went pale. I cut myself. Show me the scar. It healed. Any ER visit? Urgent care report? I didn't go. Laura didn't raise her voice. You're calling it a small cut, but there was a lot of blood. That isn't a cut. Collins broke. Okay. Yes. I was up there earlier. Around 11:30. I came to prep the gear. I heard shouting. Went up one flight and saw someone hitting Paul. Who? I couldn't see. It was dark. Tall. Thin. I panicked and ran. Why didn't you help? Collins dropped his eyes. Because I had stolen equipment in my hands. And because I'm a coward. Laura watched him and felt something she didn't like. The panic was real. Meaning he might be guilty of a dozen things. But maybe not this. Or not alone. Then Laura went to Harris's apartment. Old building. Medicine smell. A permanent atmosphere of regret. Harris opened the door with the face of a man who hadn't slept since the 90s. I need to ask about your wife, Laura said. Harris went rigid. Olivia's dead. 2 years after. Suicide. Why? Laura asked. Depression. Laura paused. Or guilt? For what? For the affair with Eric Wolf. Harris flinched like he'd been struck, then nodded. Yes. I found out the day before they vanished. She confessed. Crying. Said she loved him. What did you feel? Harris whispered. Hate. Enough to kill? He didn't look away. Yes. Where were you exactly? Lower floors. But I went up once. Around 11. I wanted to talk to Eric. I didn't find him. Why didn't you say that earlier? Harris gave a hollow laugh. Because it sounds suspicious. Laura asked to see his toolkit. Harris brought out a battered case. Everything was there. Except one item. Where's the large adjustable wrench? Laura asked. Harris swallowed. Lost it. Long time ago. About 15 years. Laura photographed the kit. Back at the station she compared measurements. That missing wrench fit one of the injuries too well. Then Laura pulled the secure line call Simmons mentioned. It existed. But it wasn't 12 minutes. It was 3. And in the audio Simmons said a line that made Laura's fingers go cold. Operation compromised. I'm taking measures. Taking measures. To a normal person, that's a report. To the wrong person, it's a promise. Laura brought the 3 men in for a confrontation. Simmons sat straight like he was still in uniform. Collins bounced his knee like a man sitting on a secret. Harris stayed quiet, polishing his glasses as if he could scrub the past clean. One of you is the killer, Laura said. Or you're all complicit. Each of you has motive. Collins, exposure. Harris, the affair. Simmons, a secret operation and fear of discovery. This is absurd, Simmons snapped. I want my lawyer, Collins barked. Harris lifted his head. I'm ready to confess. The silence thickened. But only on one condition, Harris added. Get them out. I'll tell you, only you. Inside the interview room, with the recorder running, Harris spoke in a whisper, like he believed walls could gossip. I didn't kill them. But I know who did. Laura didn't blink. Who? Harris swallowed. That night. I went up not at 11. At 11:30. On the emergency stairs. I was watching Eric. I wanted to catch him, with Olivia. Laura didn't interrupt. I heard voices. Paul. Eric. And a third voice. I didn't recognize it at first. Then I did. He exhaled. It was Simmons. What did he say? Laura asked. Harris closed his eyes. He was shouting at Paul, "You ruined everything. The operation is blown because of you." Paul asked, "What operation?" And Simmons, Harris's voice trembled, he said he'd been selling information for 3 years. That the operation was cover. Then what? Paul tried to stop him. Said, "Turn yourself in. I'll help you." Simmons laughed. Said, "You've both seen too much." Harris opened his eyes. Eric tried to run. Simmons hit him. With what? Harris looked down. With my wrench, the one I lost. Simmons took it earlier. To frame me. Laura inhaled slowly. And Paul? Paul went at him. They fought. I stepped out, I was going to help. And Simmons hit Paul with a piece of rebar. Paul dropped. And you? Laura asked. Harris swallowed hard. Simmons turned to me and said, "Perfect, Michael. Now you're the murderer. Your wrench. Your motive. The jealous husband." Laura stared at him. "Why did you stay quiet for 15 years? He threatened Olivia," Harris said. Said he had people. Said if I talked, she'd die. I believed him. Federal connections. Power. I believed him. What happened next? He forced me to help, Harris admitted, voice breaking. Move the bodies. Load them. He sat there with a gun. Where did you take them? To an old storm cellar in the woods. A place we played as kids. He said, "Let the police think the killer panicked. It'll fade." Then Harris pulled a small cassette from his pocket. I recorded him a week later, he said. He came to make sure I stayed quiet. Laura played it. Static. 2 voices. And in them, something you can't fake. Simmons, we killed them. Your wrench, remember? Your motive, the betrayed husband. Then a threat, ugly, specific, real. The tape ended. Laura called Ryan. Get a team on Simmons. Now. An hour later, Ryan called back. He's gone. Neighbors saw him leave with a suitcase about an hour ago. Put out an alert, Laura said. Statewide. They found Simmons at the bus terminal trying to buy a ticket north. He didn't resist. He looked calm. Like a man who accepted the ending years ago, he just didn't like the timing. In the interrogation room, he denied it. Then they played the tape. Simmons smiled. Fake. Modern tech. Lab will confirm authenticity, Laura said. Why did you kill them? Simmons paused. Then he said it like he was reading a justification he'd memorized. Paul Bennett wasn't who he claimed. He was foreign intelligence. I tracked him for 2 years. He was passing calm schematics. Through Eric. Laura didn't react. Proof, she asked. Simmons shrugged. Gone. Archive fire in '98. That era was chaos. Then why kill Eric? Laura asked. Witness. He knew too much. Laura ran Paul Bennett's background. And what came back was worse than any spy story. Before age 18, almost nothing. A listed group home had burned down in the 80s. Records destroyed. And Grace, the sister, was adopted by another family years earlier. Too many holes. Too neatly arranged to be random. And too convenient for a killer who wanted to die in his own righteousness. The trial began 2 months later. Parts of the case were sealed. Simmons sat calmly. When asked if he felt remorse, he said, "No. I did my duty." Duty of a soldier, the prosecutor asked, or duty of a murderer? Simmons didn't blink. In my world, they're the same. Sentence, life. Harris was tried separately, accessory after the fact. Evidence suppression. Given the threats, the recording, and the time that had passed, he received a reduced sentence. Outside the courtroom, Harris told Laura, "I deserve worse." Laura answered honestly, "Maybe. But at least you stopped being a coward." Collins was cleared in the murders. For the thefts, he got a heavy fine and probation. He told reporters, "I always knew Simmons was dangerous. I just didn't think it was like this." Megan Wolfe left town. Before she did, she stood at her husband's grave and whispered, "I'm sorry." Grace Bennett never believed the spy story. She told Laura, "Paul was the most honest man I ever knew." Laura didn't argue. Because in cases like this, the truth rarely looks like truth. Sometimes an idealist is more dangerous than a spy. Because systems hate idealists more. 2 years later, Cedar Ridge Tower was demolished. A housing complex went up in its place. Families moved in. People walked their dogs. Paid mortgages. Grilled steaks in backyards. And almost nobody knew what used to be there. A pit. 2 lives. 1 cassette. And one question that never truly disappears, was Simmons telling the truth about espionage, or did he just find the perfect story to justify murder so he could die believing he was Ree?